So can I just, first of all, have a show of hands, just kind of see who's in the room, who's going to be bored and who maybe may find this interesting. Who's kind of on the more developer side using WordPress? And who's on the content creation side? And who's using it for something else? Okay. Whatever that be. Okay, so there's not really too much on the technical side in this presentation. I did think I was going second, and I was going to take some screen grabs of a bit more code and go into a bit more depth, but Dan stitched me up, so. So anyway, as mentioned, I run a WordPress development agency. We work with a lot of other agencies, providing white label solutions to them. I'm a WordPress developer myself. I'm a PHP hacker stroke WordPress developer. So a lot of the work that we do, we put the messaging out that we just work with WordPress because it makes it easy for us to open conversations with potential clients, and then we can talk to them about the skills of the team, so on and so forth. So why do our clients like to use WordPress? Well, the main feedback that came back is it's familiar. They know that when they go /w the admin, they'll always get a login page. When they go into the dashboard, there's always going to be a familiar feel. It's very similar site across site. Ease of use. If implemented correctly, it's really easy for their clients to manage their content. Marketplace, so they love working with pre-existing themes, although we hate them. Hopefully there's no theme developers taking any offence at that. And there's plugins as well. So the marketplace is another reason that I like to use it, and access to developers. So some of our clients have in-house teams, some of them don't. So they'll work with freelancers or agencies like ours to deliver projects for them. But the question that comes along is, well, why do you use WordPress? Is it right for the project? So I just kind of had to think about a few of the projects that we've delivered and why we use WordPress for them, why we didn't use WordPress for them, and where that took us. So the first project that I'm going to talk a little bit about is KBB, or Keep Britain Biking. Keep Britain Biking is a community-based website for people that ride motorbikes and scooters and mopeds in the UK. So the main components of the site is user-generated content. So users can go onto the site, create an account, and then once they've got an account, they can contribute to the forums. They can submit events to be added, and ride-outs and events, and there's content around biker-friendly locations across the UK, and they can also post blogs as well. One of the requirements was that the users be able to manage front-end editing, so which kind of contradicts what I said previously about the familiar feel of the back end. For this particular project, it was a requirement that the users didn't see the back end, that they had a nice friendly interface within the framework of the main website, because they're not necessarily going to be familiar with the WordPress kind of back-end ecosystem, and they're also not going to be familiar with having a back-end to a website and a front-end, as there'd be no training provided to them. So the main content that was being managed on this site were pictures, videos and text. So what did we use out of WordPress to deliver this project? Well, we used custom post types. So obviously there's events, blogs, forum was handled by WordPress, but events and blogs and cafes and different types of venues. So custom post types, and then we use the taxonomies because there's geographical location. So when you go onto the Biking in Britain section, you can see what's happening in your area. So users were able to post their content to different taxonomies, which then they can get to through the front end. We use advanced custom fields. Some people love it, some people hate it. We're on the first side. So we use advanced custom fields because it was really easy to set up the custom data types that the clients or that the users and the cyclists needed to enter. We use WordPress because it gave us the forum functionality out of the box, install and theme it and change some configuration settings, and we needed to go. We use Gravity Forms for the front end editing, so that was easy to post the information from the front end straight into WordPress, and then have it filter through to taxonomies, post types, so on and so forth. And we use Discuss plugin, third-party service for the comment elements on the blogs and events, so on and so forth. We also use some custom functionality for some of the other things going around the site. Previously, this site was built on WordPress because somebody heard the word community and instantly installed WordPress. But actually, when we looked at the functionality that was required, WordPress didn't offer it, so we stripped WordPress out and created custom functionality to do the elements that they wanted around the community. And then had fun writing a custom migration script to pull all the data out of WordPress and the users. A WordPress version that I think was about a good few years old anyway. And yeah, so we wrote a migration script to pull that in. So was WordPress the right tool for the job? Well, there was no real relationship between the data that needed to be stored in the database. There was no third-party integrations. The only kind of content relation was that there was a piece of content and it was related to a post type and an author. It met the technical requirements and it met the client specification and the budgetary requirements of the project. So the next project I'd like to talk about is crowd property. So is everyone kind of familiar with Kickstarter and crowdfunding platforms? So if you're not, what a crowdfunding platform does, I've got an idea, I'd like to get some funding for it, so I can post that idea onto a website like Kickstarter, for example, and then people in the community who are on Kickstarter can then donate to my product and support me. So this was what was happening. They were sourcing funding from users on the internet for property development. So this was a data-driven application because a lot of the data was driving the application. And, and there was a blog functionality as well. So kind of when we say data-driven, it meant, by that I mean that the information and the data was vital to the business, and all the relations that were going on between that data were vital. So for example, on KBB, the previous site, if a user happened to post a blog and it went into the events section, it's not business critical. It's not a good issue to have, but it's not business critical. With this platform, if a user pledged money to a project and it went to another project, well, that's business critical to them. So when we looked at that, we decided that we were going to work with Laravel and WordPress. So Laravel is a PHP application framework, and then we use WordPress to provide the blog functionality rather than inventing the wheel. So was WordPress the overall right tool for this job? Well, we didn't feel it was. You may have a different opinion, and you're entitled to as well. So could we have achieved what we provided to the client with WordPress? Well, yes, we could have. We could have installed WordPress, we could have got some plugins, we could have wrote some custom code. But one of the issues with WordPress is that if we're bringing in third-party plugins, we can't make sure that the data's working together properly for what this client required. So that's why we decided to do this. For example, on certain projects, so KBB, we use Gravity Forms to capture the data on the front end, and then we use advanced custom fields to allow the client to manage and curate that data on the back end. but the problem was that it stored the data in different ways. So there was no continuity between the data storage, so the data integrity wasn't up to what this project would have required. In fact, this project was inherited from a company who had tried to build it on WordPress and failed. And also there was the scalability of what the client wanted to do with the product, and the product development timeline and feature. We really didn't feel that WordPress was the right tool for the job. So while doing this project, anybody ever had one of these in the room? Show of hands. Anyone ever received a change request? Oh, I need to speak to a lot of these people because they're doing something right here. So we had a change request that the client now wanted to edit the content on the front of the site. So there was the main home page, there was a login feature, and then that would allow a user to pledge towards a property, and then that would allow the administration to log in and download that data, and then all that's processed offline by their legal team. But there was a call, and then there was the blog which ran on WordPress in a subdirectory. So how are we going to solve this, or provide a solution for the client's request? Well, we could have rebuilt or built a new CMS inside Laravel, which would have been from the ground up CMS. So rather than that, what we decided to do, because they were already familiar with editing content using WordPress, and because we were already running WordPress on the site, was we integrated WordPress for the front-end management of the site, which Junaid assures me that was really easy to do, but I wouldn't have a clue how to do it. So these are his comments in purple. So what we did, we brought in the WordPress API loader, and then we brought the WordPress core into Laravel. So with Laravel, it's really easy to integrate this. And then we set up WP config, so it's connecting to the WordPress database and pulling out the WordPress content. And then we just checked to see if WordPress existed. And so that meant within the Laravel template engine, we could easily just define what the page was within the Laravel Blade templating system. We could define what the WordPress page was, and then almost use the identical code that we'd use within the WordPress ecosystem to display the content. So again, we use advanced custom fields and the WordPress API to deliver that functionality for us. So was WordPress the right tool for the job? Well, it wasn't the best tool for the job, because the best solution would have been to build it within Laravel if it was managing the content in Laravel. However, it was the right solution for the job because it met the client's requirement. We did what they wanted. So we decided that WordPress was the right tool for the job. So next project I'd like to talk about is a project that we did for a property services company. So we can't name the project because some of the work that we do is under NDA with our agency clients, because it's a... I'm doing well. Because we offer white label services, and some of the projects we will talk about. So this client had a network of hyper-local sites, and the sites had similar content, and they also had localized content. So for example, on the home page there'd be an introductory paragraph about what the company did, but there might also be a phone number. So for example, if there's a site in Birmingham, it will have introductory paragraph and then the 0121 number. And then if it was the site offering the service in London on a separate domain, it would have the introductory paragraph and then the 020 number. So that's what we mean about kind of similar content and localized content to the URL. So to meet those requirements, we used multi-site. We used a multi-site duplication plugin, and then we used advanced custom fields for a bit of a fan. So it met the requirements of the client because they had 4 trades that they offer. So they offered electrics, locksmith, plumbing and drainage. So we set up a different theme for each of those, and what they needed to do was publish lots of sites over a short period of time. So by cloning the content and then editing it, it was the right solution for them. So was WordPress the right tool for the job? Well, yes it was, and we followed all the WordPress conventions in building that. Then came a change request. We get along with this. So over a short period of time, they've built a network of 700 sites on this platform for 700 locations across the United Kingdom. I didn't even know there were 700 locations in the UK, but apparently there are. So all of a sudden, it became a mammoth task to manage this content, because if they wanted to change one word in the introductory paragraph across 700 sites, they had to go into 700 page edit screens on 700 URLs with 700 usernames and 700 passwords. I bet they're all admin anyway. And then to change that content. So it became a real bind for them to do that, and their site became unmanageable. So we had a few options. We could either rebuild with a custom CMS, because WordPress isn't made to work this way. It's not supposed to work like that, with that functionality. Or we could change the way WordPress works at its core, which is totally against what WordPress should do. So we changed the core functionality. So rather than having a multi-site, we set up a custom post type, which was called site, and then each page had the name of a URL. So for example, www.myservice in Birmingham. I'm trying not to say one of the sites. So my service in Birmingham, and so so that post type had 700 posts in it, one for each of the websites. So because there were 4 lots of localized, 4 lots of generic content, one for each of the trades that they offer, we then set up 4 WordPress databases to manage that. So each one had a list of the sites for that service. We made a cache of all the sites, and modified WP config or hacked WP config to route that data through to the right place. So it was using the WordPress backend, but it wasn't really working how WordPress is supposed to work. Why did we do this? Because a lot of people will argue, well, this is bad practice. You should build a custom CMS. This isn't how WordPress is supposed to work. But we felt it was the right solution for the time scale, for the budget. There weren't any retraining issues with the client. We didn't need to retrain them when we handed it over. It was very familiar to them, and it didn't incur a prohibitive cost of building this custom system from the ground up. So we used WordPress as the tool to meet the requirements. So was WordPress the right tool for the job? Well, it wasn't necessarily, again, the best tool, but we felt it was the right tool because it met the client's requirements and it met our functional requirements or our technical specification for what we needed to do. So I suppose it's kind of different from that perspective. In summary, is WordPress always the right tool for the job? Well, no, but sometimes do you have to use WordPress to get the job done? But yes, you do. And that's kind of where I got to. Any questions?
How did you do for security?
With which?
Security of the sites themselves, hacking and so on. Brute force attacks, which regularly come back.
Okay. This is what I told Junaid had to come with.
It mostly work with, I don't need to stand by the way. We mostly work with reliable plugins, which we know you're never able to hack. And second, we don't use generic usernames and passwords. So even if you try to run a brute force attack, you never know what username you're using. And our passwords are always strong. And we tell our clients to use strong passwords. If they're not using strong passwords, we change ourselves. So we have a mechanism in place. So that's why we are not scared of these attacks.
Any other questions? Please.
Hi. When you hacked WordPress, did you find that you had any issue when updating to the latest issue of WordPress or anything like that?
No, we didn't. Because of the way we did it, so what we did, in WP config, we included a separate filter that managed all that data. So it was just a line included in WP config because it needed to do that before you start kind of getting into the theme, before you start kind of processing the theme, because we needed to split it out to one of the 4 separate databases. So we did that in the WP config, but we just included all the functionality in a separate file with the separate classes. So we didn't run into any issues when updating WordPress.
So Nathan, has it ever got to the stage where you've said, actually, do you know, you just can't do this in WordPress?
Yeah, absolutely. So so taking crowd property as an example, for what the client wants to do and where they want to go with it, WordPress wasn't the right solution. So there was obviously the cost is different to have a custom solution built than use tools out of the box.
Yeah.
But using the tools out of the box wouldn't have, although it would have met their need of having a website that provides this functionality, it wouldn't have been the right solution.
Right.
So we were prepared to lose a client or potential client rather than kind of fit a square peg in a round hole, which is going to come back to bite us on the ass and the client at some point down the line.
Okay, thanks.
Please.
Yeah, when you're looking at a new project, are there any kind of key, clear flag indicators that instantly say to you, WordPress isn't going to be what we need?
Yeah, so kind of we were speaking about this at length today. So WordPress is a content management system. So if the core functionality of the site is managing content, then we would go the WordPress way. But if it's providing a application and extended functionality beyond managing content, then we would generally say that WordPress isn't the right solution. But if somebody insisted we want this built in WordPress, then we'll build it and build it to maintain it when it all falls down. Thank you.
Thank you.